and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this month's update, the Ascension update for the month of January and beyond. This will be quite a deep update and actually also very simple. Why? So in the month of December, we already felt the carrier energy that now is the archetypal energy of this year. And now this month of January, which it really started with the Big Bang, and I was talking about this in my New Year's update, so you can watch that if you feel so called, which I recommend you do. It really started with the Big Bang. This is what I keep hearing. And if you were in tune with the energy, not just what you expect of the year or what people are talking about the year, because this is what most people do, and I've been talking about this in the yearly update as well, our obsessions with prophecies and waiting for what others will say about things instead of moving with self-initiative, right? So as a part of my own initiative, I made a series of New Year's videos. One was a retrospect video for the 2018 and the themes playing out, and the themes were still unfolding and unpacking in our journey, as well as the New Year energy update, and also a spirit channeled an hour long reading that's available on Patreon only. So with this entrance into this year, there was quite an explosive energy. There was an eruptive energy, and a lot of it had to deal with Mars moving into the cardinal point of Aries. It was at 0 degrees of Aries, exactly on 31st of January, which was on Sylvester's. Okay, so it was very interesting as well, because in December 31st we had Jupiter conjunct Saturn, and now also the Sun being conjunct with Saturn in the first few days of the new year, which is kind of giving us the emphasis of the structure, because Saturn is that disciplined planet which invites us to receive new directives for the karmic implementations. I don't like to use the word karmic, because when I talk about karma, it's not what people are talking about, the reincarnation within the karmic wheel. That's truly just another matrix program running on this planet. But I'm talking about more of a dharmic connotation, that, you know, we all have a destined trajectory, which really in an unfoldment at the beginning of this year, this was very much obvious to us. So I feel that we were pushed into this new seed that really wants to be birthed. And this Mars being so active in Aries, which is kind of like a pushy energy, it may feel like a lot of fire that wants to almost like eradicate the old programs and templates within us, and wants to begin something fresh and anew. And the energy that really starts the sealing off, that brings the first call, that brings the first initiative into our new year ahead, is the solar eclipse in Capricorn on January 5th, which is this weekend. And then we will have also a lunar eclipse, which will be on January 21st, which is a total lunar eclipse in Leo. But what we will also have is what I've talked about in the yearly update. In January 13, Jupiter square Neptune. This will be 3 times the alignment, will be exact this year. So watch the New Year's video for those updates and what this means for us, also as an evolving collective. So what's important with this, what I call this Big Bang energy, right, with which the year began, is a lot of us feels this, we're feeling this push, we're feeling this drive to unify aspects of us that maybe they were a little stagnant. So imagine like going on a long journey. You go on a long pilgrimage, right? And during that pilgrimage, you're learning a lot about yourself. You're getting skills, right? A lot that's there as opportunities at your disposal. However, at the end of this journey, which is not the journey's end, but a passageway that leads into the new, and this is what this year definitely feels like. I know a lot of people don't believe in Gregorian calendar. I don't as well. I believe in the implementation of our personal cycles, which means that every time that is our true new shift has to be felt internally, because this is a shift that occurs through our life force. And I'm going to talk about this in the second part, so what this is teaching us. But even though we don't believe in such things or linear calendars, there is an energy that was seeded at the beginning of this year. If you look at the nature of astrology and how cycles are evolving, and then you also observe that in correlation also to geomagnetic activity as well as the solar activity and impact, and why this is so. And a wider message about this is a part of my channeled yearly message. It's a spirit message available on my download page as well as my Patreon. It's a message that covers all of these themes and everything we're going through, but at a more, it's like a wider perspective, conscious angle, because there's still so much of us that wants to know what's going to happen, know how, what are we going to initiate, because every year in January we initiate energy, but it's not an active initiation as much as we want it to be, because we have a true beginning of the new year, as you know, in spring equinox here in the northern hemisphere. That's in March, I think 22nd, something like that, it depends. But we are beginning to be impulsed in a new way, and all of you who have felt this very physically in your body, you might have felt it like a burning sensation to keep on moving, because even though the journey has been long and it's brought a lot of fruition and a lot of mastery, it's been a long journey. It's been quite an unfolding trajectory, which in a way it made us also tired and weary. So in my own personal development, what I've noticed is the true strong calling of my inner child, which wanted life to be simple again. It wanted it to be more simplified, more organic, more in flow. It didn't want to have this feeling of, wow, Ascension became almost like a responsibility. I'm not talking about the self journey here. In my own example, it's sharing this journey with others. As you know, I've been here for over 8 years doing this work. It's been quite a journey. And for me, what I've noticed recently is, remember back in autumn of 2018, I've shared about the illumination of the inner child and how important that is to, the keys of Ascension being handled to the inner illumined child within. And that was quite a knock-knock experience, because the child within kept on waiting. It did its work. It stayed very introvert, in a sense that it allowed this unfolding of greater wisdom to occur, which used a lot of our time. But today I've gotten this beautiful metaphor. It's when you put a lot of your energy into something, at a certain extent, if you don't know how to withdraw or withhold life force energy, that part will somehow overdevelop. And in my case, that part was a very strong working part. It was a very diligent working part that kept on working, pushing, striving to do this, to finish this work, to accomplish that, to share as much content, to put everything I receive out. And I receive a lot on a daily basis. And I had this notion that everything I receive, I have to automatically put out and share. And it was a lot. And in the compilation of these many years, it added up to so many videos with hours of material and teaching about this greater multidimensional consciousness and our existence in it. But, recently Spirit showed me that a lot of this is, whether we're aware of it or not, it almost makes us act more seriously than what is truly, it's not the final step of Ascension, but the step of Ascension that we call the surrendering. And we've been indicated, right, that, and I was sharing in autumn about this, the keys being handed out to the inner child. He's saying, within us, or she's saying, look, I got it covered, trust me. I know I'm like this spinning formation. I'm this spinning hyperactive energy of so much joy, fun, pleasure, well-being. I know what to do. I know how to take care of myself. You don't always have to be so serious and all in preparation in this, okay? So for me, what these 3 days of the new year were all about, it's like everything happens in threes, right? Divine Trinity. So January 1st, 2nd, and 3rd were all about like gradual release into seeing all these aspects that are still coming out. All these things that, through which we base our reality in terms of expectancy, and it's a recycling of energy, and it's a cyclical formation. So we're not allowed to be our spiral. So let's say we begin our day with, what are our tasks ahead, right? What are our chores, things to do? And when you talk about in terms of spiral consciousness, you can talk about it in very metaphysical understanding, and yet there's a part of us that simply wants to know how this plays out in our physical lives, right? Let's be serious about it. That's what we're here for, to implement this greater metaphysical understanding in very simple human processing terms. So that part is almost like trying to be noticed by us and saying, look, this is where this plays out. This is the actual play field. This is the great field of work. It's a research, you know, it's like you can be a scientist and work years and years in a laboratory in an enclosed space without any additional factors and things that also influence your experiment. And then one day you go out and you put your glasses off and you're like, wow, the world has so many other variables of life to explore, and you open up. So this is kind of like how this beginning of the year feels like, especially this month. We're seeding the element of that equation. Okay, so there's a lot of preparation, and in certain times this preparation gets dull, you know. So now I was feeling it for myself. Everything that was coming through was a no. It was like no, and I was like, what is this no? And my illumined counsel was telling me this is about knowing that you're here on earth as a human. You're a divine being. You can't be like us when you are us, you know, in the high council. This is the aspect where you are that. This is the expression of the multidimensional nature, and that's always within you. But you can't mistake that for being that all the time. So ascension, in terms of being a journey of devotion, doesn't mean a devotion that's static, you know, almost like when we believe things are supposed to be routine, and instead of saying routine, we're supposed to say things like ritual, right? Things have to become our own inner ritual. So when we understand spiral consciousness in a practical form, this means that every day you first have to initiate your spiral, right? You have to begin. You have to give an impulse through your life force. You have to cultivate your daily quotient of life force that you will then use and utilize in whatever you'll be creating. This is the new way of functioning in a practical sense. So like I said, there are many metaphysical approaches of understanding and explanation, but in practical terms, this is what it all comes down to. And it's every day waking up and tuning into what's the initiation of our spiral. We have to spin the spiral. So instead of spinning the wheel, which we kept on doing and on, now we're going to spin the spiral, right? So I keep seeing my energy within as, I don't know what they call it, the spinning little thingy that you spin. That's not the dreidel. What is it called? You know, in the game when you spin the, I don't know, we have a word here in our language, but I don't know it now in English. So when you spin that, you create the spin-off frequency. And in the solstice message for the new year ahead, there was a channeling about this new spin-off. So only we get to create this. This is not just going to happen, right? So in the yearly message, Spirit talks about the event, how it's not one thing, and it's actually many micro cosmic bleep moments that are adding up to each other, but we're not noticing them because they're so subtle. And we're saying we're missing something. Are we missing something? At the same time, we're already evolving into that. Those of us who are doing the preparation work vibrationally. So to spin the energy, to put it into motion every day, is how we live spiral consciousness every day. So every day we tune into the energy. What is the energy of now feels like? Then we create that spin-off, and then we watch it unfold, and we create along that unfoldment. Instead of, you know, when we're being in repetitive cycles, patterns, routines, cyclical formation, we're actually just revolving around a circle. So I've explained in the yearly message that multidimensional consciousness is not you like being in a sense of multitasking. It's not the same. Multidimensional consciousness is not you being able to multitask like a best person ever. This is not about that. This is you holding space with such awareness of your spin that everything else is also simultaneously being put into motion. But you're in this pillar frequency. At the same time, you're able to engulf all of these spin-off energies simultaneously in parallel by holding your space who you are now. And this on earth is our inner illumined child. So today, I just really felt the old just wants to dissolve and move away and make space for the new. And I felt the calling to reach for these shamanic oracles. They're like beautiful traditional sacred, I think it's called the wheel of the year, or something with the wheel. I don't know. It's a beautiful initiating energy that comes through the oracle. And I got the card called Purity, about the innocence and inner child. And the first sentence already opened my heart so much because it was about the inner child within. Just, when you're dreaming about that time when things were much more simple. And recently, through my own reflective and retrospective journey, I remember times when I was just channeling and doing things for me, and it felt like when I'm doing it, I'm already putting it out into the whole. Times when I didn't have this pressure that everything I'm getting from Spirit, which is a lot. I get guidance like non-stop because of the nature of my multidimensional consciousness. But then the pressure that comes along with is the pressure that says, now you have to make something of that. Now you have to create this into a product. And a lot of people do that. And they have these contracts, you know, when you work for a company, like a publishing company, or people who are now in the agreement, they have to produce oracles all the time. You know, when you first create something, it's so pure, and then they tell you, well, we expect something of the same, like in a few months, you know, make it like this, and then it becomes manufactured. It's no longer organic. And this is what's actually, you know, I'm gonna say wrong, but I will say this is so dysfunctional in the way that we truly are, like spinning dreidels or wheels into motion, which are spirals. We're all these beautiful spirals of creativity. But if we don't work consciously with the spiraling consciousness, we become something else, and our lives will feel like flat. So I started feeling like I'm no longer living my authentic reality, not because before I didn't, but because I've outgrown this so much. And this journey of sharing these 8 years have brought me to a space and knowing that certain times are just these times that you always knew they're going to happen. You know, they're going to come. There's going to come a time of point of completion and synthesis, but it's not the end of the journey. It's just like you create a spin-off and you move into something completely different. And these are actually the most challenging aspects of our being, because you still have a whole grip, right? You have a firm grip on something, and you don't always know how to break that energy and move into something completely different, because you might have expectations based on yourself, or you feel they're coming from others. But in fact, when you really go deep within enough, you will feel like you've created this. It was all you. Like, people respond to that. Even if people have expectations that are based on their own processing, it's still, you know, a belief within you that you have to hold up to those standards that kind of sustains that in your reality. So reality, as changing and shifting because we are, is always going to ask of us to be authentic and to be real with what is right now. And in many cases now we have to see we've outgrown many things. So in the Patreon I'm going to create a mini synthesis of Ascension course that's going to be on my Patreon. My next update is that I will no longer do courses for free here on YouTube and intense channel guidance. I have tons of material. It's all already there. People who maybe will wake up or be guided to that material, they will find it. It's all there. I don't feel in any way it's necessary. Remember, I've shared with you that in the conclusion or completion message, it was a synthesis message for the way we are being informed, and it was at the end of 2018. Spirit was talking about that the times of processing and sharing out information are moving. It's like we're being moved. Those of us who are moving into greater levels of illumination, that's kind of like it's passé. It's like we're ready for the next stage. And because this is a time of the great unknown, I've shared in the yearly message that this year is the first year when the unknown frequency is really felt. It's that creative void. You know, sometimes artists will say, I have a creative block, but it's not a block. It's just within that space where they feel nothing's coming through, they have to discover new elements of who they are. So we, you know, when we're creating, it's very good, but even the highest beings in terms of states of awareness, how expanded they are, can get a sense of feeling lost. They can get lost in their creations when you kind of don't know how to exit in the right time. And this is why I talk about the life force mastery is so important. Knowing when to enter into the creative cycle and knowing how to withhold yourself from it or withdraw your life force, like our sun is doing now. It's being called the grand solar minimum. We're approaching that because the sun is also physically getting ready to synthesize all of its emanation and to bring forth, because of that, greater assistance. When the sun does that, there's other cosmic rays from other suns, from other celestial systems and realities that are now coming through, giving support and offering guidance. Well, it's the same for us. When you withdraw the way you think you always have to be active and present with the world and engage with the world, the same thing happens. There's going to be support and sustenance coming and being held at other levels. But you have to know this is how reality functions. It's all built through your inner life force. So when we create things, you know, we can always argue what's the beginning of the year. Well, we have our personal cycle, right? Every year, 365 days, we're here on Earth. We say that's our birthday, that's our solar return. But also it changes, right? And everything is changing because the calendar is not exactly as a Gregorian nature as it is. So we can be very confused if we want to now see, well, what's a real birthday? Is it changing every year? What's this? What's that, right? We have our solar return differently every year. It's not always in the exact time or hour than when we were truly born. But you know, we can also say, well, the new year is the new year. You know, the solstice is the new year. You know, the equinox point in March is. But in truth, when you go much, much deeper, you will see that when you will master the understanding of spiral consciousness, is that the life force within you is going to show you what each cycle is for you. So there's a lot of beautiful material about this. I've recently shared with you the book about this from Cosmic Companions called Larkma. They have a book. I've shared it in my New Year's video. It's about how to master these cycles, your personal cycles and greater cycles in combination of cosmic energy patterns and earth energy patterns. But for me, I don't even follow that. I really I'm a master of my life force, and I follow the inner cycles. And when I feel the energy of death, I simply feel it. And I know I'm in the phase of waning. When I feel something within me just being pregnant and growing and growing and birthing, I know I'm in the cycle of growing. So it all can be felt once we really apply ourselves through the mastery of life force consciousness. So this month is still a strong invitation to know that everything that we were shown last year through the art of illumination, now it's time to get busy spitting in our hands, getting dirty, down and dirty. No, but I mean, it's really time to implement those things. Like in my own example, right? The hours of work that I do here in the sharing, first I have to channel everything, which takes a lot. Then I have to share all this. Then I have to do the computer work. And recently I've just felt this repulsive energy towards anything based on electronics and computers and internet. I just felt such a strong aversion, and I asked myself why this is so. And then Spirit was sharing with me that this with 8 years of constant this and that, it's normal. I'm not a superhuman. I'm not a superhero. I came here, I did my work, one part of it, and now I have to move on to other things. And they said it's just normal. But at a human level, people hold such high expectations. First, we have it for ourselves, then others have it for us, and we take things for granted. They're always going to be this way. Ascension will always be about this way of sharing. We're always going to learn that way. No, you know, my point of all these videos was to make you grow in awareness, that you start to be spirit infused, life force infused yourself. That's why the love within me created all these courses to assist you to become your own master of life force, because I believe my strongest purpose is not these monthly updates when I sit down and I share this and that with you, but it's the art of that knowledge which is timeless, and application of that timeless knowledge into the structure which is organic for you now. It's the real time is where our mastery lies, and we can only do that each on our own. There is no other guide who can do this. And the sharing of information eventually becomes overdue. And it's like, okay, even that has to step aside for greater things. So when the sun is stepping aside, let us ask ourselves what the inner ascending star that is us, our being, our essence, is also in a way doing the same. And maybe we're also not just here to question this process and say, oh, what's going to happen? Is it going to get colder? Is it going to get hotter? Are we going to be bombarded? It's going to be disasters. But let us instead begin this year with a self-conscious, right? Not self-conscious, but conscious of the self impulse, the initiation for a new year ahead. That is, how am I naturally, organically aligned with this greater multidimensional ascension process? And it is a multidimensional ascension. I have a whole course about it, and it's a beautiful unfolding. So the more organic we are, where not just our life force is, but in terms of spiral consciousness, how our spiral of life attunes us to greater spirals. So when we're cyclical in nature, we can't attune. And even people who are saying, I'm connecting to spirit, well, there's many forms of how, and we use the word spirit. We use it for our spirit guides, ancestors, all of that. But when I say spirit, I mean the Holy Spirit, which is the essence of life. And it's the spiral consciousness that's a greater consciousness, that's a synthesis of all of the life essences that flow together as one in unity consciousness. So only by accessing your own spiral consciousness and operating fully by it through life force mastery can you reach greater levels. So that's why I feel called to offer this free mini course on my Patreon for my beautiful supporters on the synthesis for Ascension. It will be a lot about that, the completion of timelines, soul contracts, agreements. I don't use the word contracts. Soul agreements, and moving into the spiral formation and how these cycles and how we can impulse them. And if you feel called, this will all be there. But I have something very important to share as well. It's very cold. We have minus degrees here today. Can you believe? Well, it's January. So we're being impulsed by cold. But one more thing I wish to share with you is that, as well as everyone else, I have my own process, and I feel because of these 8 years of constant, it was a constant push to produce, because I've channeled so much, and at the same time, there was this feeling like I have to share it. There was this enthusiastic part of me that wanted to put everything out. And I remember once, right, someone sent me this anime cartoon, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, who sent me this? Why is this here? Why am I watching it? And I was watching it, and it was this beautiful girl, and she was so full of life, and she was running, and she was running like through hills, all the countryside. She was running like crazy. She never stopped, and she was running, and at the end of the video, she just drops to the ground, totally exhausted, and she just melts with everything, and it's like almost she evaporated. And I'm watching that, I'm like, oh, this reminds me of someone. I never stop. I'm like a raging fireball. And now my body is impulsing me in a different way because I've changed so much, and it's telling me, look, it's time to slow down, to simplify, because all that was processed now, all the information is there. The DNA awakening for those on this path, it's done. Now, no one has a special role to play. Like, even if you are here as a guide assisting others, a guide is an essence of what you are. It is not the job you're supposed to do, and it's not an expectancy people can put on you. And I'm not ever going to work like that, because it's inauthentic, and it's false, because that degree of work, you're telling yourself and you're telling others, oh, I'm supposed to do this for you, and it's not true. Because if you will watch the Channeled Spirit Guidance, which is on Patreon for this year, it speaks all about being the inner authority, and knowing that when truth of your life force and how you cultivate it every day is guided through spiral consciousness, then everything is already so perfect, and you're always in alignment with the greater spiral of life. You're always doing things you're needing to do, and you're not giving yourself extra jobs, assignments, role because you think you have to. So let's say you're unfolding your spiral in this way, but you say, oh, I'm going to stop and put it on pause because I need to do this first. And this sense of need became such a diabolical almost expression. It's so inauthentic to our nature, and this is why this complete surrendering, perhaps for many of you as well, everything you thought you need to do, or people get very adjusted into their roles, right? This is my role, I have to do this, and it's almost like a disease on this planet, and there's no growth in that, because there's an expression of archetypes that moves through us, and each moment in time there's an archetype that really wants to be birthed through us, and we do that. Once we achieve it, the energy is sealed. Once it is sealed, there's nothing for us to do there anymore. It's like, what next? And the longer we persist in that energy, the less evolution there will be, because we're simply telling ourselves, well, this is all there is. And eventually a question will come, is this all there is to life? And even in the word of what you know is your purpose, even that will expand through your life. And if you don't allow it, it won't have time to grow and expand itself in that way. So my body has been impulsing me in a very strong way. I was releasing a lot, I had to do the work, which in a way I postponed a lot because of all the content that was on my shoulders. It became almost like a burden in the last few months of the year. Basically, the whole 2018 felt very burdensome for me because I had to unpack a lot of things, and there was pressure of delivery, and simply everything now crumbled. When this year came, this new Aries energy, this 0 point, right? right on the Sylvesters, it was almost like a wave of strong energy impulsing us into this new chapter, which I feel the eclipse season, which we're now in January, will flush through that especially, and will create almost like a dynamic change, a dynamic push forward. And because the energy is so, it's almost like raging fire beneath it. I feel like I'm impulsed, like all the time I'm like pulsating like this, and if I do anything that I'm not supposed to do, I get very upset and nervous. And when I feel nervous, almost like this energy that it's not natural to us, I have to breathe and stop and say, wait a minute, why am I doing this in the old way? I need to be impulsed through the new. And there is no other way but truly to discover our own way, how we're going to allow this impulsing to move through us, how we're going to allow ourselves to be impulsed in a new way, whether it's through, I believe for me, it has to be all practices. It has to be meditation, it has to be easing, calming down of energy, then it has to also be aligned with cultivating the energy through life force mastery, then it also has to be amplified, which I do through the cosmic dance. And whenever I don't do that and I give other things advantage because I say, well, it has to be done, I need to do it, who else will? Then I get into this mode that's pressured and it's forced and it's cyclical and it almost makes you feel sick. So the more you are in this illumined child template, the more the body will tell you this is not the right way. This is not how life should feel now. Well, never. But, you know, there's people who are not in this new way of being impulsed through the galactic pulse of life, and it works fine for them. And those of us who've changed so profoundly, it doesn't work for us anymore. I know there's spiritual teachers, figures, gurus, and they all do the same things. They're applying themselves through monthly producing of content and all of that. And I've seen that. I've been a part of this myself, and eventually I was like, but we're all here ultimately for our self-growth, and this is not cyclical. This is not routine. This is not a delivery of something. The delivery itself, the format, it's changing, but it's changing naturally because we within ourselves are allowing ourselves to be new every time. You know, I give you one example. Every time I create something new, and I'm very excited about it. The first time, let's say, I made a channeled grid for the Patreon monthly guidance. And I put it out there. I'm like, the first time it had no name. It was not channel guidance for Ascension, for Patreon, whatever, supporters. It was just the creation itself. And it was so pure and beautiful. And then the mind goes, oh, maybe I'll do that every month. Oh, to do for people who support me. And we get like this. So the mind is still always trying to make something out of something because we were programmed this way. And it's all bad. And it's all faulty. But what we're doing is we're meeting the heart, the expression that's timeless, that's spiraling, that's impulsed every time anew in a new way, and that has to expand. And this is why I now want to inform you that my content on Patreon will increase in depth, but it will be what will need to be and what comes through spirit at a moment. And it will be maybe a grid, maybe it will be a reading, maybe it will be a video, maybe it will be a mini course, maybe it will be a channeled Ascension spirit guidance. Maybe it'll just be a meditation. I really want to offer a yearly meditation. But when I feel the call, not when something pressures, you know, it's like a pressure. It pressures you. And people who are of high consciousness, we also are of high demand of ourselves. You need to know that. We are our toughest bosses. If you think bosses when you work in a company are tough, well, you got to meet someone like me. We're our toughest boss. And when we are our own boss, we're not allowing spirit to be our true boss. And my life was a combination of pure spirit service and my own implementation of that, which now is making room for there to only be spirit impulse, to only be a natural, organic way of the child within to be that birth of spirit and form. And I read you that beautiful feminine essence channel message about the body, how the body now feels this new impulse. So I'm going to end it here because it's getting cold. You know me, I could sit here with you for hours. My biggest message here for the changes that will be happening is that I will probably only end up doing monthly video updates on YouTube. It's just how it is. My own constraints in my body work are leaving me where they are. I basically now don't have much energy left. I have to initiate a whole new creation cycle, which probably won't begin before the equinox. So I will allow myself to have much needed time for rest, because this is not the kind of rest, you know, you go physically strain yourself, you're tired, you rest a day, a week, and then you're done. This is the creation of a fully new template in the physical, a new body, and it takes all of you, like I said, but it brings so much in return. And it's a lot to to work with, you know, so it's very intense. So I will go more into my conscious retreat mode. This is such a month. I got a lot of messages also in oracles of rest. Like a lot was already achieved, but now let's all allow ourselves the rest and not say, oh, now we've achieved, now let's move on to the next thing. No, next, you know, like the running clock always there. And we're not factory workers here. We are beings of high conscious intelligence who are growing and who are seeing our human misinterpretations of a lot that's coming through at the higher spirit level, and we're all needing to do that work. It doesn't matter how advanced or higher consciousness, like how expanded it is in terms of its evolution at the soul level, but it's about the work that's here right in front of us now. And this is one of the reasons I believe it's very important for me to know, you know, almost like the messages, you did all this work and people hold you in a certain, seership or regards. But then I feel like I want to be the same way that I know I have all this knowing and wisdom. I also want to allow myself to be nothing and no one. Not just for a while, but I want that part of me also to be always fully present, not just the part that says, I know this, so it's my responsibility or duty to share. I want to allow myself the space to say, I also don't know. I also want to be in that space of creative playfulness, like, ooh, what's next? Without a need to always deliver in a certain way. And for me, that's the most important message for all of us here as a collective. And you know me, I share personally because I am the one who this comes through. So I cannot share in an impersonal way. For me, that's theoretic and it doesn't work. It's the application that counts, because it's that application of knowledge that truly liberates us and moves us to the next octave of being. So in those words, I will say goodbye for a while. I will probably see you next month. For those of you who stay with me on Patreon, you can see the different alignments. The content will be different. It depends. It will be a basic monthly cover, content, which maybe changes. There will be a little additional and maybe a little more additional. So that all falls under different ways or forms of supporting. You can decide your own. If you are still continuously wanting to follow that path with me, I hope I will see you there. If not, I'll see you in the monthly updates here as well in some way. But the way I used to do things will no longer be the way it is. I knew eventually this time would come, so it's what it is. It's for my growth. I don't grow if I stay the same. You know that. For me, that's the most authentic sharing I can bring you. And I ask Spirit to bring all of us immense courage, that we take these new steps, to take more leaps of faith this year than ever before, and to know that the results will match that. They will reflect that. And if you want to see more, like I said, Patreon will be now the main playground. It's almost like a subscription page. The basic energy exchange is just $5 for the basic material. Then it's, gradually for different things. That I'll be sharing there. And I hope to do yearly meditation as well. I don't know. I hope. I won't promise. I don't want to make any more promises, because we all know where that leads us. And I was never the kind of person that promises something and then I don't deliver, which in many cases that brought me into creating a lot of things on myself, a lot of work, which in most cases I met a lot of people who promise things and they never deliver. And we call that over-promising, and I didn't do that. So the best way is we stay pure. We don't promise things that we don't know in that moment. It might feel great, but then sometimes it's just for triggering something within us. It's not always the actual physical, manifestation of something. We really have to flow. And that's what the surrendering into spiral consciousness is teaching us. The way we step into it is quite a task, because imagine going from this limited, constrained, cyclical into this fully free, liberated spiral. That's what Ascension is. And it's new. To most people, it's new, but yet it's there. The potential is great. And we need a lot of time and self-application for inner ritual, for inner devotion, for meditation, for conscious energy channeling, which I call life force mastery, to really move along with this great spiral of life. I hope to see you on Patreon. I see you here very soon as well, whenever. And I love you as always, with great love, wisdom, and power. Have a beautiful January, and take care. Bye.
Welcome into my world, the world of the elven song, magical